Welcome back to another video. We're going to start this one off by making you do a little work for a change. Right here you're going to insert your own joke about how expensive plywood is. I would have inserted a joke myself, but I couldn't think of a good one. Now, I love my shop, but the one complaint that I have about it is that the ceilings are super short. So it's in my basement, and in some places the ceiling isn't even 6 feet tall. So handling full sheets of plywood like this is really challenging. Here's how I will typically break down these full sheets. Right here I'm cutting both sheets together just to make the bottom and the back of this cabinet, and I think I ran out of battery there and I had to go get my mask. I've got it all clamped down to my assembly table, and right about here is when I figured out that I put my clamp way too close to my cut line, and I ran into it and just ran out of space. So I ended up having to finish this cutout with a handsaw. Moving on to the table saw, I can go ahead and break down the back and the bottom. I'm going to use dados for all the joinery here, and instead of trying to manhandle these big pieces on my table saw with a dado stack, I'm just going to do it with a router and a 3/4 inch bit. Now the only 3/4 inch bit that I have is a top bearing bit that is 2 inches long. So that's why I had to make that huge fence so that it wouldn't go too deep, cut all the way through the plywood. And then I came back with my trim router and a smaller top bearing bit to finish out the cut. I also left both of these routers set up exactly like they are until I had all of my dados cut, just to keep the consistency in the depth. Next, I can cut the dividers. And then I can cut more dados for the shelves on each side. Now, if you're anything like me, glue-ups can be super stressful. But the way that I cut these dados with both pieces nested up against each other made a line in this cabinet super easy. Just throw a few clamps on it, make sure that it's square, add some glue, and then add your pieces. Now, I was just going to put some brad nails in this, but I did end up coming back later and just running a few screws in it, just for my peace of mind that it would stay square as it dried. Now I can cut out the pieces for the wine bottle holder or wine bottle rack, whatever you want to call it. It's what's going to go right in the center of this piece. So it's going to be framed out with 3/4 inch plywood, and then the actual shelves will be 1/4 inch plywood. But thankfully all these pieces were small enough that I could handle on my table saw, so I just threw the dado stack in and kept from having to use that janky fence and that big old router bit. Moving on to cutting the dados for the wine bottle holder, wine bottle rack, whatever we're calling it at this point. The outside pieces will get a slot just cut on the what will be the inside, and the inside pieces will get a slot cut on both sides. So that's why you see me flipping the piece over and making a slot on both sides, because that's how the shelves will attach. And there's a little better view of it there, just making sure that everything is staying consistent and making sure I make all my cuts before I move the fence. Now I can actually cut the pieces for those shelves. I did something a little crazy here. I decided to do the assembly and painting all at the same time. So the upright parts are held in with screws from the bottom, and I'm kind of going with the paint holding the shelves in the dados good enough until I can get the top glued on. And I'm not worried about the shelves sliding in and out, because the back side of this rack will be against the back wall of the shelf, and the front side will have some trim pieces that will keep the shelves from sliding out anyways. So I didn't really think that glue was necessary, but I did glue the top and bottom on, so I'm really not worried about this thing coming apart. I cut a few small strips here. I'm just going to pocket hole those and put those in the bottom of the cabinet itself. And all this is for the wine bottle holder to sit on, and it raises it up just enough so that the face frame doesn't cover the bottom shelves. Now I can break down this pine slab that I'll use for the face frame and door frames. And this one is special because this came from the first tree that I ever milled with my chainsaw mill just over 2 years ago. And then this happened. Okay, so here's a little bit of a story time. Whenever I do videos, I go ahead and edit whatever I videoed that day, that night, just to make the process easier on me. And I thought that I had lost all the footage. Thought I deleted every bit of it. And I got mad. So I just kept working on the project and said screw the video. But then I realized that I still had the videos. So you've missed out on a couple of steps. The first is that I glued up this panel for the top. And the second is that I've already got the face frame made and put onto the case. So we're going to pick up from there. We're going to go straight to the top panel and get that ready. And then we'll come back and give this a good sanding. Fill in a couple of little gaps that we got. And then we'll get some paint on this thing. So, yeah. So I know I'm calling this a farmhouse wine bar, and it kind of looks rustic, but I did something crazy here. Instead of using pine 2x6s or 2x8s that you get from the big box store and staining it dark walnut, I used actual walnut. And I know, it sounds crazy, but I think you'll agree this looks way better than stained pine. Now I'm going to do breadboard ends on this top. So right here I'm just going to measure out for the, I guess this would be the mortise part of the breadboard. And I'm going to use my trim router and just eat away at it, because again, this is way too big for me to try to manhandle on my table saw, especially by myself. Now I can cut the mortise for the breadboard. Clean that bad boy up with a hand plane. do a little test fit, make sure we're not too tight or too loose. Now I know this isn't typically the way a breadboard is glued on, but honestly, if this thing blows apart one day, I'll make an update video. That being said, this is the first time I'd ever tried doing breadboard ends, and I had some trouble. I ended up just not chamfering the end of the dowel enough, and so I was having a lot of trouble getting it to actually go through, and right here I actually broke the dowel.
Well, that's just freaking great.
This is how I should have chamfered the dowels to make it easier to actually draw that breadboard end in. Oh look, more dados. Yep, more dados. This project is slam full of them. But this right here is going to be the top for the wine glass holder that will hang right over the wine bottle holder. Pretty easy assembly on these uprights or downrights, whatever those are called. Just add a little glue in the dado, add your piece, clean up the glue, check for square, and let dry. Now I didn't show earlier how I made the face frame. Right here I'm actually making the doors for the cabinet, and this is the exact same process that I went through to make the face frame. So I've got my stock planed down to 3/4 of an inch thick. I'm going to cut it to width, and then I'll cut it to length, add the pocket holes. I use a spring clamp just to get it aligned, and then I'll use a couple of little F-style clamps to clamp it tight, and then drive my pocket holes. Once the glue is dried, I'll take the inside screw out of each corner, and then I'm going to take a rabbiting bit and go around, and it's a 1/4 inch rabbiting bit, so it's going to rabbit a 1/4 inch in, and I've got it set for a 1/4 inch deep. And then I will cut some 1/4 inch plywood to go in that piece, however I'm trying to say it. Use a old cap to round off the corners. I'll take that over to the sander, make those corners round just to keep from having to make the rabbet square. Then I can just add some glue, plop it in, add a few brad nails, and that's in there forever. Oh, and then I will add that pocket hole screw back. Now this is how I do any kind of farmhouse style X-frame on a door panel or on panels of cabinets. I will eyeball the mark and then connect those marks on either side with a straight edge, and all I'm going to do is rough cut it at the bandsaw, and I'm going to get close to the line but where I can still see the line, and then I will take it over to the belt sander and actually sand up to the line, and 99% of the time I get a perfect fit just like this. These kind of glue ups can be a bit tricky, so on either end and right in the middle of these long stretches I'll put some CA glue and some activator down, and that's going to act as my clamp, because it'd be extremely hard to get any kind of clamping pressure right there in the middle. And with that activator, just hold it on there for a few seconds and it is clamped down into place. Ta-da! Everything got painted off camera. Now I can add the hardware for the sliding barn doors. Then I can drill out my, I guess that would be the mortises for the figure 8 clips to attach to the top. And if you're wondering why I'm using a bit and brace, it's because it was about 11 o'clock at night when I did this and my son was asleep right above me. Now I just have to add the toe kick, and the construction of this bad boy is done. Now you can enjoy this tomfoolery of me trying to get this thing off my assembly table by myself and get it on the ground without anything blowing up.
Did a good job of planning this one out. When you do this, you want to lift with your lower back, jerk into twisting motion. Aha! No catastrophic events. That's good. We did it!
All that's left to do is just to add the doors and make sure they function right, and this project is done. Now I love the way this project turned out, especially the walnut top. It's just got so much curl and so much figure, and you're definitely not going to get that from stained pine. Anyways, I hope that you enjoyed this video. Thanks for sticking around to the end, and as always, y'all have a good one.